Today we're focusing on what if you've seen me do any of these coaching calls before, I am a numbers and goal guru. I think that truly practices who do not get really granular with their KPIs, with their numbers, with their goals are truly flying blind in their practice. So today we're really focusing on what I truly feel like is the necessary proactive actions that are going to determine what the trajectory of your business is this year, because you guys, Q1 is around the corner and Q1 is where it starts. It's going to set the pace for the year. And I really want to make this very clear. Momentum doesn't, it's not created in January. And I know you might be thinking that sounds opposite of what you just said. Momentum is not created in January. It is executed in January. Momentum is created in the preparation that you do now to prepare for a rock star Q1 and what all the way through Q4. So one thing is very true. As a consultant, I know this for a fact. The practices that outperform are not the ones that are essentially working harder or putting in more hours or staying late or burning the candle on both ends. The practices that outperform are the ones that enter the year with clarity. They enter the year with discipline, and more importantly, operational precision. Because we all can agree on this. We all want the same thing. We all ultimately want our practices to be as profitable as possible. Profit, you guys, and you hear me say this all the time, profit is engineered. It's not done by luck. You don't just have a great Black Friday, now all of a sudden you're profitable. Profit, consistent profitability, is engineered with clarity and intention. It's never accidental. The CEOs who are going to thrive in 2026, these CEOs are going to be the ones who understand your numbers. And I kind of alluded to this in the beginning, and I'm going to keep beating this dead horse, but you guys have got to understand your numbers well enough to build profit on purpose and not on accident. So let's kind of go over what those benchmarks should be. So this is what I'm going to call your profit architecture for 2026. These are going to be your benchmarks. So here are your anchor points. Let's call them that. So labor should be 30 to 45% all in. Your injectable COGS should be 22 to 28%. Your retail, let's say your retail margin should be 45 to 55%. Your marketing spend, what you put back into marketing, should be 6 to 10% of your revenue or higher, even bonus points if it's higher, huge bonus points if it's higher, but at minimum 6 to 10% of your revenue. Your provider productivity. Let's talk a little bit about benchmarks with your providers and their KPIs that they should kind of be hitting around. There's going to be many factors involved. Are they utilized enough? Do they have butts in seats? If they have nobody in there, they're not going to hit these numbers. But overall, their benchmark anchors are going to be like your injectors should be hitting anywhere from $700 an hour on the lower end to $1,000 an hour. And when I say that, a lot of people will ask me, well, my injector is doing 450, my injector is doing 500. That's an injector who's really, really busy at doing one-off commodities. That's an injector who is great at Botox. She might get awesome results, very little to no bruising. Her patients are super happy. She's got the retention. But that is what that signals to me is that is not an injector that is selling transformational treatment plans or comprehensive treatment plans. She's selling services as one-off commodities. People are coming in for lip filler, and she's not discussing full facial balancing. And if we address the lips, we need to then also, based on your profile, also address the chin or your cheeks to make sure that we don't give you that ducky appearance. So she may be doing a great job educating the patient of what they're coming in there for, but she's not selling transformation. She's not selling retention. She's not educating retention. She's not educating on these transformational treatment plans. So you'll hear me talk about that a lot. We don't want to, in Q1, sell or educate on, one-off commodity services like just Botox or just filler or just a facial. So that is where I land on that number. So $700 to $1,000 an hour could be way higher than that as well. It doesn't cap at 1,000, but that kind of tells me that is an injector who is educating their patients on treatment plans. And estheticians, this one can really vary, and I want to be clear here. So this is just estheticians. This is not also a provider who's doing laser services as well, because that's really going to skew these numbers. But if you are an esthetician, should be anywhere from 200 to about 450 an hour. Your EBITDA. Your EBITDA, this is music to my ears. This is a huge, huge topic for me. It's really important, especially if your goal, your ultimate goal is to sell. Keep an eye on your EBITDA. So your minimum should be 20 to 28%. So those are kind of what I like to call like your industry specific benchmark anchors. And there's a lot more. I just wanted to give you guys kind of like the basics of what we're looking at. So that way, you can enter into Q1 with clear goals for yourself. And that is very much what we're going to be talking about today. So we need to prepare now so that we can propel ourselves in 2026. So what are some examples of very clear goals for Q1 in 2026? What is your specific Q1 revenue target? So, for those of you out there who manifest, my manifest kings and queens, I am one of them. The first thing that you learn about manifestation is you have to be very clear and intentional. So, you're not going to say, like, I want to be healthy. You're not just going to leave it at that. You are going to say something like, there is going to be an abundance of health coming my way. My heart is going to function exactly how it should. I'm going to wake up every day feeling refreshed with a clear mind. That is intentional manifesting. So I want you to practice that same energy with your business. And a lot of people are surprised when I give them those examples, but really it ties in because you need to be clear. You need to be clear. That's all that I'm saying. So you can't just say, I want to hit $100,000, in the first month of Q1. Be more specific and clear than that. I want to hit, 90,000 in service revenue, and I want to hit 10,000 in retail revenue. And I want to have my retention rate go up by 80%, and I want to have my rebooking rate at minimum be 85%. That is a very clear and intentional Q1 goal for you that's based around revenue or KPIs. Another good example would be, what are your expense ceilings? Where do you want to cap yourself at? Where are you giving yourself limits this year? And if you are doing your due diligence, and if you know your numbers, and you're doing financial health checks for yourself, and you're reviewing your P&L every month, you should know kind of where you have a tendency of overspending. When I do financial health checks for my clients here at Diamond in consulting, I can tell when all of a sudden maybe you went on vacation and your injector got liberty to place some orders that month because things are not in their usual pattern. Do you want to create SOPs, really clear SOPs around ordering protocols when you're in town or when you're out of town? Those would be very clear Q1 goals. Do you want to increase your provider's productivity, and by how much? Do you want to take a look at your devices or your service lists? And do you want to identify which ones are producing and which ones are not? And what percent do you want to increase those at? So the goal here in all of these examples that I'm giving you they're not broad goals. They're very intentional. And when you do that through all of the 4 quarters of the year, imagine how many strides you're going to make. Because then when you have your clear goal, you reverse engineer everything else to achieve or exceed that goal. Leadership and goal setting, we talk about this a lot, is going to require precision. It's going to require clarity. You need to be very, very clear about what exactly your goals are. Again, you can't just say, goal number 1 for Q1, I want to be profitable. Okay, that's great, but get really granular and break it down. If you walk into January without these numbers, these concrete goals, this moment of clarity for your team, you are leaning on hope instead of leaning on strategy. So we all know this. I would argue that Q1 is one of the highest demand quarters in aesthetics. But high demand only becomes high revenue or high profit when your systems are prepared to capture that profit. So let's talk about what that looks like. So the benchmarks that we had discovered in the last session here. So let's talk about like your consult conversion. What's your consultation conversion rate? Sweet spot is going to be anywhere from 70 to 90%. That's great. That's a great benchmark. And again, if we have demand and we have butts and seats, that demand only becomes that reality if your team is trained on your consultation SOPs. Are they trained on the expectations that you have in place? Is your team operationally prepared to hit that 70 to 90% consultation conversion? A couple more benchmarks to throw out there because people love hearing real industry benchmarks, and I love to give them to you. Same day treatment conversion. Someone's coming in for that consultation or a walk-in, even better yet, if you're in a situation where, you're kind of in like a shopping mall type of thing. Same day treatment conversion, 60 to 75%. Membership retention, this is a big one, and I get a lot of pushback on this. And if you're pushing back on this percentage, your membership is not designed properly. It should be 80% or higher. That's your membership retention. Are people staying on your membership past the 3 months, the 6 months, or the 12-month commitment? And your retail attachment. This one's pretty straightforward, not very controversial in the industry, but anywhere from 15 to 35%. 35% being your best in class. So what does this mean essentially? Because all of those benchmarks we're talking about, we have to have systems in place in order to capture it. So what that means is your systems are your power. Your systems are your profit. If your team sees KPI goals and they have no systems, they have no training or SOPs to lean on to reach those goals are pointless. You just sat in your office for 45 minutes to 3 hours getting really clear with these goals. Let's say you have a team meeting with your team and you say, here are the goals, and you're very clear and you're intentional, and you checked MJ's first box of exactly what I asked of you. Get clear, get intentional, and relay that to your team, but you don't give them the tools in their toolbox. They are going to leave that meeting understanding the expectations of what you're trying to hit, but they're not going to have the tools in their toolbox to get there. So, you guys, your systems are your power and your systems are your profit. So, you have to lead them and you have to train them to get there. So, that could look like a couple of different things. Your scheduling. Your scheduling must be optimized for to reach that type of utilization that you're firing towards. Follow-ups, the beauty and the fortune is in the follow-up. If you're a client of mine, you'll hear me say that all the time. The fortune is in the follow-up. That has to be executed within 24 hours, no exceptions. It is such a pet peeve of mine when my clients are like, I have no one to call. I have no one to put up an automation, throw up an automation so that they get some type of touch point of how are you doing? It should be a personalized phone call, and you should have the capacity for a front desk, for a medical assistant, for your manager, for the provider themselves, somebody to touch base with a client that got, whether it's an invasive or a non-invasive service done within 24 hours. The fortune is in the follow-up. Availability. Your availability has got to match demand surges. So remember, Q1, we're going to get a surge of those new year, new me with peptides and all of the things. We are a target market for them right now. So we have to have the availability. If you have an injector, a laser tech, and an esthetician, and they're all firing at 95% utilization or even 80%, it is time to hire. It is time to hire. You don't have the availability that's going to match that demand, and they're going to go somewhere else. Another example, promotional planning that has got to protect your margins and not sacrifice it. You'll hear me say this a lot on my coaching calls. I'm moving away from discount culture. I'm moving away from training your customers or training your patients to wait for these discounts. We don't want them to wait for Black Friday. We don't want them to wait for Valentine's Day to get their lips done or wait for a monthly promotion that they're coming to expect. Your promotional planning, and we are fantastic here at Diamond with this, that it is very strategic. You do not want to create a culture of discount hoppers, or you have to protect your margins. And if you don't do your COGS analysis at least once a year and figure out where your margins have room to discount, or even worse, if you didn't do that before you put together your membership, you are sacrificing your ROI. You're sacrificing your margin. So promotional preparedness and planning has got to protect that margin and not sacrifice it. So I guess what I'm saying there is don't get so excited at the opportunity that Q1 has and the type of patience that it's going to give you that you throw a bunch of discounts in the air hoping that a couple of people grab them and they come in. Be strategic about it because they're there. The butts will come into the seats, I promise you. And membership campaigns, those have got to be structured and communicated before January. So if you're a practice where you're either revamping your membership or you are launching a new membership for the very first time, January is really the time to capitalize on membership conversions. So please don't wait until February or March to launch your memberships. You are delayed to the game. So we want to be operationally prepared and launch those and communicate and train your team. Make sure your team is trained before January. So ultimately, revenue in Q1 is going to be 100% determined by how disciplined you were in Q4. So right now. And I want to tell you a perfect example of, while we're on the theme of systems being your power and preparing your team and giving them training and SOPs, I want to tell you a perfect example of a conversation that I had yesterday around this time, actually, with a client. And we were going over a brand new team member. This is a newer client to me, so they haven't had MJ's Tough Love yet. We are going over a brand new team member. And we were going over their performance. We were looking at November KPIs. And I just could tell that the manager and the owner's responses regarding this team member were very, very negative. And she had been there this is her second month there. They were saying things like, she's just not getting it. We sent in a secret shopper. Her consultations are so impersonal. She was not asking any discovery questions and, just going on and on. And I felt this very negative connotation or this negative response from them. And I asked them, has this provider been in aesthetics before? Is this her first role in aesthetics? And they said no. And I said, okay, well, how have we prepared her? Have we trained her? Has she done any formal consultation and sales trainings? And their answers really shocked me. They said no, they have not done any of that with her, and they expect her to know that. And if as a provider she does not know that, then she is quote unquote not a good provider. And you guys, I was shocked. If your team is ill-equipped, the first person that you need to look at is your leadership, your management, your owners. If your team is ill-equipped, and this doesn't mean incompetent in terms of like medical terminology or things that they should know as a provider. This is your expectations of what you want your brand's consultations to look like. Come to us at Consulting at Diamond Accelerator and get formal sales and consultation trainings. Give her the tools in her toolbox. Teach her how to reach these KPIs. Teach her how to reach these realistic expectations. And then send in a secret shopper. I'm all for a secret shopper, but it has to be executed properly. It can't just be to see how she does on her own. She's off the deep end with no floaties and no one taught her how to swim. You're going to expect her to drown. And I was really giving them that tough love. And their response to me again was just shocking. Like, if she doesn't know this just based on her intuition, she's a bad provider. That's not true. So I challenged their mindset, and we're going to do one-on-one trainings with her because now I have a personal vendetta. I know that she can do this. She just needs the tools in her toolbox. So that story really leads me to kind of the point that I'm trying to hit here is your operational preparedness, your systems, your SOPs in Q1. Are they tight, and is your team aligned? Are they aligned with each other? Are they aligned with the SOPs? Are they aligned with the trainings that you've given them? And are they aligned with you and your expectations? Because team alignment is a non-negotiable. When I train on anything, but we'll just use memberships, for example, if your team is not using similar verbiage and they're explaining a 3-tier or a 2-tier membership completely opposite of each other, your patients are going to get like extremely fatigued. They're going to hear one explanation of it this way. They're going to go in the back and hear it a completely different way. They don't need to be reading from a script, but their verbiage needs to be aligned in a way where, it's cohesive. There's some continuity there. So your team alignment is a non-negotiable when it comes to sales, when it comes to operational preparedness, when it comes to anything. And a business, I promise you this, a practice can only scale to the level of clarity when it's built inside of its culture. So when clarity is built inside the culture and we have clear systems, clear goals, clear SOPs, then you will be successful. So here's what I want from you. I want every single team member to come into Q1 with a defined revenue target. And remember, it's not just revenue. It's not just I'm going to hit X, Y, and Z. It's I'm going to hit X, Y, and Z in retail, X, Y, Z in total revenue and service revenue. Get granular. So I want you guys to come together and I want every team member to walk into Q1 with a defined revenue target of some type, clearly set, clean expectations, a structured role on how to get there, maybe a maybe a mid-quarter temp check that's on the schedule for your manager to touch base with them. How are things going? And maybe your ownership could have a bonus structure goal that is tied to your EBITDA. So not chaos producing volume. So let's get really clear. I want every team member from ownership to providers, to front desk, to managers, to walk into Q1 with a goal. Get your team invested. Get your team invested in the practice and in its growth. So let's kind of talk about what some benchmarks and again, some industry specific benchmarks that we can tie this to. So if you're a provider and your rebooking rate, let's say right now is floating on the lower side, let's say it's floating at like 30, 40%. Your granular and clear goal is going to be, I want my rebooking rate to be 70% or higher by the end of Q1, which is in March. Maybe your front desk goals could be, or goal, into Q1 could be, I want my conversion rate and my speed to lead to increase. So she's given us two. I want my conversion rate to be over, let's say 85%. So that's best in class. That's really, really good. And I want my speed to lead on average, because remember, we've got tools where we can pull this information, whether it's Podium or Zenoti or whatever type of platform you're utilizing. I want my speed to lead to be in a minute or less, 60 seconds on average or less. Maybe as a practice owner or a manager, if you're in control of things like this, I want my providers' utilization. Right now, on average, all of my providers' utilization, let's just say, is about like 40%. They're on the lower end. They've got some room to grow. That they're kind of sitting around here and there. I want their utilization to grow to 70% minimum on average, all of them. I want it to be at 70%. And now, to get even more clear and to get even more granular, you're going to say out loud how you guys are going to get there. So if you're owners or if you're managers and you want that utilization goal to get to 70%, you're going to say, I'm going to increase my marketing spend to get butts in seats. I'm going to have my team do B2B outreach. We're going to do grassroots marketing. We're going to do an event. We're going to revamp our referral program. I barely thought about those for less than 30 seconds and I just gave you 5. So if you give them until the end of the month to really get granular and come and do an all hands team meeting and say these things out loud. We talked in the beginning of this coaching call about manifestation. Say these things together out loud and get very clear. So most performance issues, again, are clarity issues. I cannot stress it enough. And most teams, I hate this word, but most teams, they don't fail because they lack motivation. They are failing because their leaders have not defined the rules of the game, or worse, they define the rules and they don't give the tools in their toolbox to reach those. So as CEOs, as practice owners, your responsibility is to remove any fog, any smoke. Your providers should know exactly what success is going to look like and exactly how it's going to be measured. Your operational cleanup is the discipline that is going to protect your profit. I promise you, 100% of the time. Operational cleanup protects that profit and it will actually grow that profit for you. Q1, the success of it is all determined by the housekeeping that you're going to do this month. Bonus points if you jumped on it last month, but a lot of people are still in the Black Friday mode. So think ahead. If we want to start thinking about Q2, Q3, or even Q4 of next year, success is determined by that operational house cleaning that is absolutely necessary. And what does operational housekeeping look like? This is going to be let's say updating SOPs. This is going to be ensuring that your inventory is accurate. That is such a hot button topic right now. Ensure that it is accurate. You clean up your payroll structure. Maybe you can eliminate some unnecessary subscriptions. Sometimes when I go through P&Ls, I'm like, you're paying for 4 of the same thing. Do you even know that? Maybe you dive into renegotiating some of your vendor contracts this quarter. Maybe you really tighten up your schedule SOP. So that way you eliminate what I call cheesy schedules, where there's a bunch of holes in it. If you picture like a block of cheese, you've got a bunch of holes in your schedule. Maybe you're touching up your scheduling SOPs. Maybe you're locking in a clear meeting cadence for whether it's daily huddles, weekly meetings, monthly reviews, whatever. Ultimately, that operational housekeeping is going to be what is going to really help you eliminate chaos. And chaos, you guys, is going to erode your profit. It happens 100% of the time. I've been seeing it happen for years now. And your systems are going to protect that because the practices that are going to scale are not the ones with the most talent. They are definitely talented, don't get me wrong, but they are the ones with the cleanest infrastructure. So let's enter 2026 with strategic focus and clarity, knowing your numbers. Please know your KPIs, please know your goals, do a financial health check. If that overwhelms you, we will happily do it for you, and choose your direction and how intense your momentum is going to be in Q1 or 2026 in general with some intention, because where intention goes, money is going to flow. Because that type of profit is going to require a CEO to lead with clarity and not be a reactive CEO. So make sure that you, instead of putting out fires all day, you're preventing the fires. So here I'm going to simplify it even further for you. I want you to think of 3 strategic priorities for the quarter, not 7, not 12, 3. Because if you start really uncovering things, it's going to become overwhelming. It's been a while since I've looked at my handbook. It's been a while since I've reassessed my provider KPIs. It's been a while since we've had a team meeting. I don't want you to think of 19, 20. I want you to think of 3. Is it expanding your injectable capacity? Is it increasing your EBITDA? Is it fixing your patient retention or reputation building? Whatever it is. When a business has too many priorities, it loses its power. And I want to give you an example. Solid Core. Solid Core is kind of like it's a fitness class. I just watched her on a podcast the other day, the owner of Solid Core. She sold it for, I think, tens and tens of millions. Huge sell at the end. And she knew when she started Solid Core that her goal was to sell. She had a priority and she stuck to it, because everything in your organization, hiring, spending, marketing, training, decision making, must support those priorities. And she said in the podcast, I knew my end goal. So every single decision that I made, I thought to myself, does it align with my exit? Does it align with my exit? Does it align with my exit? And if the answer was ever no, she didn't do it. Even if her gut or something told her that she should, if it didn't align with her priority, which was that large exit at the end, she did not do it. So know what your priorities are. Give it that power. And if you have too many priorities, like the 17 or the 19 or the 20 that I'm talking about, they're going to lose their power. I want you to think of at least 3 or 1 big one. And when you have at least 3, or even better, if you can narrow it down to that 1, your practice is going to become unstoppable. So think about what you want for your practice and reverse engineer every single daily decision to get there. And we're going to start at Q1 this year. So preparing for Q1 is not a tactical task. This isn't something where like, oh, just give me another checklist or another tactical task. This is a strategic advantage that you are going to walk into 2026 into. The CEOs who will win in 2026 are going to be the ones who operate with clarity and follow the framework that I just gave you today. Measure what matters, eliminate what doesn't, get very clear on your goals, and execute what fundamentally supports that goal. So success is not going to be created in the year ahead in 2027, or I'll get there in 2028. It is built in Q4, the month prior to Q1, because I want you to remember these 3 things. Number 1, success is ultimately in your systems. Systems is going to protect your success. Clarity is going to make you unstoppable. That clarity that I'm talking about. Figure out what your end goal is and then reverse engineer every single decision that you make to get there. And if you can measure it, you can grow it. So if you are not measuring it, if you don't know your numbers, you're flying blind and you cannot grow it. So let's build a powerful Q1, an extraordinary 2026, and let's get very, very clear with our goals. Let's get intentional, and let's dive into it, you guys. Pick 3 things, or even better yet, just 1. Get very intentional with what you want.